Red Zone, Book 1, Wipeout Squad Audiobook Series. Chapter 7, The Voice in Your Head. The server room had become a fortress. Steele crouched behind a bank of humming processors, his HUD displaying hour 5:47 as Wolf's upload crept to 32% completion. Around him, his team held their defensive positions. Deadeye on his elevated perch, Hammer guarding the north corridor, Breach watching their six despite his injured shoulder, and Stitch positioned near Wolf to protect the scientist. 28 minutes remaining, Wolf announced without looking up from his terminal. His fingers trembled as they worked the interface, sweat visible through his hazmat suit's faceplate. The navigation data is fragmenting. The servers are more damaged than I thought. I need to reroute through secondary systems. Steele's ammunition counter read 18 rounds. He'd been rationing every shot, but the math was simple and brutal. If they faced another major assault before the upload completed, they'd be fighting with empty weapons. Movement, Deadeye called from above, his rifle tracking shapes in the fog. Multiple contacts, but they're keeping distance, like they're waiting for something. That was the wrong kind of behavior. Mutants that waited, that showed patience and tactical thinking, were infinitely more dangerous than mindless charges. Steele checked his timer again. The desynchronization was worse now. His HUD flickered between 5:49 and 5:52, unable to settle on a consistent timestamp. "Boss," Hammer's voice carried tension, "I'm seeing something weird. The fog's pulling back from our position, creating a circle around us." Steele moved to where he could see what Hammer meant. The demolitions expert was right. The red fog that had been pressing against them like a living thing was retreating, leaving a clear zone approximately 30 meters in diameter. Through the thinning haze, Steele could see the crawlers and whisperers that had been massing for another assault. They stood perfectly still, arranged in concentric circles, their heads all tilted at the same angle. "They're waiting," Stitch said quietly. His medical scanner was tracking the mutants' vital signs, and what he saw made his voice tight with fear. Their heart rates are synchronizing, all of them. It's like they're becoming one organism. "The network is consolidating," Wolf said without pausing his work. "When multiple mutants coordinate this perfectly, it usually means a higher form is taking direct control, a puppeteer or something worse." Steele's ceramic armor suddenly felt very thin. They'd killed one puppeteer already, but if another was out there, coordinating dozens of lesser mutants. "3-signal protocol," Steele announced to his team. "From this moment, anyone acting strange or out of character gets challenged. I'll initiate with 3 taps on comms," he demonstrated, 3 sharp clicks through the encrypted channel. "You respond with 2 taps. Failure to respond correctly means you're compromised. Understood?" A chorus of double taps came back from each team member. "Good. Stay sharp. Something's coming." The silence stretched. The mutants remained frozen in their circles. Wolf's upload ticked to 41%. Steele's HUD showed hour 5:58, then jumped to hour 6:02. Time was becoming meaningless. That's when Steele saw it. At first, it was just a distortion in the fog, a shimmer like heat rising from pavement, but moving with purpose. Then the shape began to materialize, and Steele felt his gorge rise. The puppeteer was barely a meter tall, more tissue than creature. Its body was a pale knot of sinew and nerve fibers, glistening wet, wrapped around a skull so small it could have belonged to a child. But the skull was all wrong. Elongated, with eye sockets that seemed to see in too many directions at once. Tendrils of flesh extended from the central mass, writhing with independent life, each one tipped with something that looked disturbingly like a human hand. "Contact," Steele whispered, bringing his carbine up. "Puppeteer, center position." But his finger wouldn't pull the trigger. His arm was frozen, locked in position by something that wasn't physical restraint, but pure mental pressure. He tried to move, tried to fight, but his body wouldn't obey. Around him, he heard his team struggling with the same paralysis. "Can't move. Deadeye gasped from his perch. "It's in my head. I can feel it." The puppeteer drifted forward, not walking, but floating inches above the floor. Its presence was a violation, a wrongness that made Steele's vision swim and his inner ear scream with vertigo. Reality bent around the creature. Angles that should have been 90 degrees became acute. Surfaces that should have been flat rippled like water. Then it spoke, but not with sound. Its voice was directly in Steele's mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "Interesting. You have the suppressor, the chemical barrier, but minds are flexible, malleable. Watch." Steele felt the mental pressure increase. His HUD began showing impossible data, temperature readings of 900 degrees, ammunition counts in the negative thousands, chronometer displaying dates from years in the past. The armor systems were being corrupted by pure psionic force. Beside him, Stitch suddenly jerked upright, his movements puppet-like. The medic's eyes were wide with terror, but his hands moved without his conscious control. He drew his sidearm in one smooth motion. "No," Stitch whispered, his voice breaking. "No, please, I can't." His pistol came up, aimed directly at Deadeye's exposed back. The sniper was still struggling against the paralysis, completely vulnerable. Steele's mind raced. The puppeteer was demonstrating its power, showing them how easily it could turn them against each other. This was psychological warfare at its most devastating. But Steele had trained for mental compromise scenarios, had drilled the 3-signal protocol into his team precisely for situations like this. He couldn't move his arms, but his jaw still worked. "Protocol!" Steele shouted. 3-signal, now!" His tongue hit the transmit button in his helmet, 3 sharp clicks through the encrypted channel. Stitch's eyes locked onto Steele's, and in them was desperate gratitude. The medic's finger was tightening on the trigger, his hand moving against his will, but Steele's protocol had broken through enough for him to act. At the last possible moment, Stitch twisted his arm upward. The shot went wide, the round impacting harmlessly against the ceiling. But the recoil threw off the puppeteer's control for just a fraction of a second. Steele felt the mental pressure release. His arm moved. He brought the carbine around and fired a 3-round burst into the puppeteer's central mass. The creature shrieked, a sound that existed in his mind rather than his ears, and its control shattered completely. The paralysis released like a snapping rubber band, and the team exploded into action. "Fire! Fire! Fire!" Steele roared, squeezing the trigger until his carbine clicked empty. Deadeye's rifle barked from above. Hammer charged forward with his sledgehammer raised. But the puppeteer wasn't done. Even as rounds punched through its tissue, even as black ichor sprayed from a dozen wounds, it lashed out with pure psionic force. Steele's vision inverted. The floor became the ceiling, the walls bent inward, and he felt himself falling in 6 directions at once. Beside him, Breach was firing his weapon at empty air, shooting at enemies that didn't exist. Hammer swung his sledgehammer at Wolf, who scrambled backward with a cry of terror. "It's dying," Wolf shouted over the chaos. "When they die, they release all their stored psychic energy at once. The Psi-storm is—" The puppeteer exploded. Not physically, but mentally. A shockwave of pure psionic force that hit the team like a freight train. Steele's HUD went completely haywire. He saw overlapping images, the server room, the shopping mall from the landing, his childhood home on Earth, all existing in the same space simultaneously. His ears filled with voices, dozens of them, hundreds of them, all the dead soldiers who had fallen on Karo 7. "Help me, please God, help me! My legs, I can't feel my legs! Sarah, tell Sarah I love her! They're coming through the walls!" The voices were real. They had weight, substance, history. Steele recognized some of them from previous missions, from soldiers he'd watched die. The puppeteer had harvested their final moments, recorded their death throes, and now it was broadcasting them directly into the team's minds. Deadeye was firing wildly from his perch, shooting at phantoms that only he could see. Breach had collapsed to his knees, hands pressed against his helmet, screaming. Hammer stood frozen, his sledgehammer raised against an invisible enemy. And Stitch? The medic's eyes rolled back in his head. Blood trickled from his nose. His mouth opened in a silent scream, and then he collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Stitch! Steel crawled toward the fallen medic, his vision still swimming with impossible images. His hands found Stitch's neck, checking for a pulse. It was there, but erratic, jumping from racing to barely present. He's in a coma. Wolf was suddenly beside Steel, his portable medical scanner out. Psychic overload. The puppeteer's death scream overwhelmed his neural defenses. I can stabilize him, but what? Wolf's face was grim behind his faceplate. I'm a virologist, Sergeant. I know biochemistry, cellular structures, viral replication. I'm not a combat medic. I can keep him alive, but I can't do what Stitch could do. If anyone else gets seriously wounded. He left the implication hanging. Without Stitch, their medical capabilities were severely compromised. Steel forced himself to focus through the psionic aftershocks. Around them, the lesser mutants were dying too. The puppeteer's death had triggered a cascade failure in the network. Crawlers were collapsing, whisperers were seizing, and the red fog itself seemed to pulse with each dying creature's final moments. Everyone, sound off, Steel commanded, trying to cut through the chaos with discipline. Deadeye. I see them, boss. All of them. The dead. They're standing right there. The sniper's voice was hollow, broken. Lieutenant Raven's squad. They're telling me to join them. They're not real, Steel said firmly. Focus on my voice. The visions are psionic echoes. They'll fade. Breach here. Jesus, I'm seeing the demo charges going off. All of them, at once. We're all about to die. The explosion, it's Breach. 3 signal protocol, now. Steel transmitted 3 clicks. After a terrible pause, 2 clicks came back. Breach was still in there, fighting the visions. Hammer? No response. Hammer, sound off. Steel looked to where the big man stood frozen. Hammer's eyes were open but unseeing, his massive frame locked in place like a statue. Whatever he was experiencing in the Psi-storm, it had him completely trapped. That's when the radio crackled to life. Not our encrypted channel, but the open frequency they'd been monitoring. Lieutenant Raven's voice, distorted by static and interference. Mall squads, they're in the walls. The puppeteer is in the walls. It's controlling them, making them... Sounds of gunfire, screaming. Then Raven's voice again, but different now. Wrong. Command. This is Lieutenant Raven. Mission successful. Returning to base. All clear. The mechanical quality in her voice made Steel's skin crawl. That wasn't Raven anymore. That was something else, wearing her voice like a suit. Steel, come in. This is Raven. Need immediate support at our position. Coordinates transmitting now. Don't respond, Wolf urged, working frantically over Stitch's unconscious form. That's not her. The network has her. Steel's HUD showed the coordinates Raven's signal was transmitting from. They were less than 200 meters away, in the complex's east wing. Close enough to reach in minutes. Boss, Deadeye called down, his voice still shaky but more controlled. The visions are fading. I can function. What are your orders? Steel's mind churned through scenarios. Raven's squad was compromised, possibly dead, definitely not in control of their own actions. Stitch was comatose. Hammer was locked in some psionic paralysis. They were down to 3 effective soldiers, low on ammunition, and the upload was only at 58% complete. We hold position, Steel decided. We complete the mission. Raven's squad they're gone. We can't save them. But boss, Breach started. They're gone. Steel's voice was harsh, hating himself for saying it. If we go after them, we compromise the mission. Wolf's data needs to reach command. That's the priority. The radio transmitted again. Steel, please, it hurts. They're inside my head, making me. Raven's voice dissolved into static, then reformed with that mechanical quality. All clear. Mission successful. Returning to base. The loop repeated, over and over. Each time a little different, a little more wrong. Steel forced himself to focus on immediate concerns. Wolf was injecting Stitch with something from his medical kit, monitoring the medic's vitals with his scanner. How is he? Stable, but comatose. The psychic trauma was severe. He might wake up in hours, might be days. I've administered neuroprotective agents, but beyond that. Wolf shook his head. We need to get him to proper medical facilities. How long on the upload? 19 minutes. Then we can move. Steel checked his ammunition. Empty magazine, one spare left with 15 rounds. He reloaded, the mechanical action helping to center him. Around the server room, the dead mutants were beginning to decay rapidly, their flesh liquefying into pools of black ichor that ate through the floor tiles. Hammer suddenly gasped, his paralysis breaking. I saw them, he said hoarsely. All the people I've killed. Human targets, from before the cleanup squads. They were asking me why I did it. His hands shook. I didn't have an answer. They weren't real, Steele said, though he knew his words were inadequate. The peace storm. I know what it was, Hammer interrupted. Doesn't make it hurt less. Deadeye climbed down from his perch, moving carefully as if afraid his legs might not hold. Boss, we need to talk about what just happened. That puppeteer got inside our heads, turned Stitch against us. If there are more of them. There will be more of them, Wolf said grimly. The network doesn't just have puppeteers. It has mindbenders, broodmothers, possibly things we haven't classified yet. And they're all learning from what just happened. They know our 3-signal protocol now. They saw how we responded. Next time, they'll adapt. Steele's HUD flickered, hour 6:34, then jumped, hour 6:41. The peace storm was still affecting their equipment, their perception of time itself becoming unreliable. Then we adapt faster, Steele said, with more confidence than he felt. Breach, are you functional? Yeah, shoulder's killing me, and I'm seeing double, but I can fight. Good. Deadeye. The visions are manageable. I can shoot straight. Hammer. The big man hefted his sledgehammer, testing his grip. I'm here, boss. Not pretty, but I'm here. Steele nodded. They were battered, psychically scarred, down one man, but they were still operational. That would have to be enough. 15 minutes on the upload, Wolf announced. Then we move to... He stopped abruptly, staring at his terminal. Wait, no, something's wrong. The data stream is corrupted. I'm seeing interference in the upload, like something's trying to access the system remotely. Can they do that? Steele demanded. Can the network hack our equipment? They shouldn't be able to, Wolf said, his fingers flying across the interface. But that puppeteer got inside our heads. Maybe it saw Wolf's access codes. Maybe... The server room's lights flickered, failed, came back on, but now they pulsed red instead of white. And through the speakers, through every communication channel simultaneously, came a voice that made Steele's blood run cold. It was Colonel Steele's voice, the legendary war hero, Patient Zero, but filtered through something alien, something vast and incomprehensible. Cleanup Squad, you carry my name, you wear my insignia, you follow my tactical doctrines. Know that you fight what I have become. The Crimson has made us perfect. Join us, become perfect. Resistance is inefficient. The upload progress bar jumped to 0. The servers began to smoke. No, Wolf frantically typed commands. It's wiping the data, the entire upload. I have to restart from... The servers exploded in a shower of sparks. Wolf staggered back, his suit smoking. The upload was gone. 47 minutes of work, destroyed in seconds. Steele's HUD showed hour 6:53. In the silence that followed, Raven's voice came over the radio one final time. They're in the walls. Chapter 8: The Hydra's Lair and Crystallization. The emergency stairwell echoed with the scrape of boots and labored breathing. Steele led the team upward, away from the ruined server room and the smoking wreckage of their primary objective. Behind him, Hammer and Breach carried Stitch on a makeshift stretcher, 2 support poles and a thermal blanket, the medic's unconscious bodies strapped down with equipment webbing. "How much farther?" Breach gasped, his wounded shoulder making every step agony despite the pain suppressors Wolf had administered. "2 more levels," Steele replied, checking his HUD. Hour 7:14. The timer jumped. Hour 7:09. The psionic interference from the Puppeteer's death was still wreaking havoc with their equipment. "We need to reach the shopping mall. It's our only shot at extraction." "The mall where we started?" Deadeye's voice carried disbelief. "Boss, that place was crawling with hostiles. We barely made it out the first time, and we had Stitch conscious then." "We don't have a choice." Steele's words came out harsher than intended. "The server route is compromised. The network knows we're here, knows our objectives. Our only option is to fight back to the original landing zone and hope the evac birds can punch through the fog." Wolf stumbled on the stairs behind them, his civilian hazmat suit not designed for this kind of movement. "Sergeant, the shopping mall. In my research notes, I documented unusual crystallization patterns in that sector. The virus was entering a new transformation phase. We don't know what we'll find there." "Then we'll adapt when we get there," Steele said grimly. "Hammer, how's Stitch?" The big man adjusted his grip on the stretcher. "Breathing steady. Pulse is there. But he's not waking up, boss. Whatever that thing did to his head." "Wolf will keep him stable." Steele tried to sound confident, but the truth was gnawing at him. Without their combat medic, every injury became potentially fatal. And Wolf, brilliant virologist though he was, had hands that shook every time he tried to perform even basic first aid. They burst through a doorway onto the complex's ground level. The red fog here was thicker than ever, visibility down to barely 20 meters. But Steele could see shapes ahead. The massive, skeletal outline of the shopping mall's collapsed structure. "Contact!" Deadeye's rifle came up. "Multiple thermals. They're not moving, just standing there." Steele activated his helmet's enhanced optics and felt his breath catch. Throughout the mall's first floor, figures stood frozen in place. Dozens of them, hundreds maybe. But these weren't mutants. They were human, or had been. "What the hell?" Breach whispered. As they approached, the truth became horrifyingly clear. The people were encased in red crystal. Translucent, blood-colored formations that grew from the floor and walls, trapping the victims in mid-stride, mid-scream, mid-death. The crystal was beautiful in its horror, faceted like ruby, pulsing with faint internal light. "It's the virus," Wolf breathed, moving closer to examine a crystallized woman. She was frozen, reaching toward a doorway, her mouth open in a silent cry. The final stage of transformation. The crimson matrix is crystallizing organic matter, preserving it for, God, we don't know what for. Steele studied the crystallized people. Through the translucent surface, he could see their eyes moving, tracking the squad's movements with terrible awareness. They're alive, conscious. Worse, Wolf confirmed, his scanner pressed against the crystal. Their neural activity is spiking. They're aware, experiencing everything, but completely immobilized. It's a form of stasis, but one that preserves consciousness. The cruelty is... He trailed off, unable to find words. "Can we break them out?" Stitch would have asked that, Steele thought bitterly. The medic always looked for ways to save people. "I wouldn't recommend it," Wolf said, backing away from the crystal. "Look at the structural integrity. These formations are integrated with the victim's cellular structure. Breaking the crystal would be like..." A sharp crack interrupted him. Steele spun to see Breach stumbling, his boot having struck the edge of a crystallized man's outstretched hand. A fissure ran up the crystal surface, spiderwebbing across the man's arm. "Breach! Freeze!" Steel commanded. "Nobody move!" But it was too late. The crack spread, racing up the crystallized man's body. Then, the crystal shattered with a sound like breaking glass. The man inside came to life. But he wasn't human anymore. His eyes blazed red, his muscles bulged grotesquely, and his mouth opened in a roar that echoed through the mall. He moved with impossible speed, launching himself at Breach with talons that had burst through his fingertips. "Berserker!" Wolf shouted. "Breaking the crystal triggers a rage state. Don't engage the others." Hammer dropped his end of Stitch's stretcher and swung his sledgehammer in one smooth motion. The weapon caught the berserker mid-leap, crushing its ribcage with a wet crunch. The creature fell, twitched once, and lay still. "Form up," barked. "Nobody touches the crystals. We move through this zone carefully. Disturb nothing." They advanced deeper into the mall, and the scope of the crystallization became apparent. Entire sections of the floor had transformed into red crystal forests, spires and columns growing from the tiles, ceiling fixtures encased in faceted formations. And everywhere, frozen people watched them pass with moving eyes. "It's like a museum," Deadeye muttered. "A museum of horror." Steel's HUD flickered. Hour 7:31. They were burning time they didn't have. He checked his ammunition. 15 rounds in his current magazine, nothing in reserve. Around them, the shopping mall groaned and settled, structural supports compromised by the crystalline growths. "Boss," Hammer called from the rear. "Stitch is stirring." Hope surged through Steel. He turned to see the medic's eyes fluttering, his lips moving soundlessly. But as Wolf leaned in to check his vitals, Stitch's eyes rolled back and he went still again. "Damn," Wolf muttered, his hands hovering uncertainly over Stitch's body. I don't know what to do. His neural patterns are fluctuating. He's trying to wake up, but the psychic trauma." "Just keep him alive," Steel said, resuming their march. They passed through what had once been a food court. The tables were encased in crystal, the chairs fused to the floor in impossible angles. And ahead, Steel heard it, a sound that made his skin crawl with recognition. The Hydra. Its 3 heads emerged from the fog, each one distinct in its horror. The left head had compound eyes that glittered with alien intelligence. The center head's mandibles dripped with acid that ate through the floor tiles. And the right head, eyeless, covered in acoustic holes, clicked and whistled, tasting the air with sound. "The same one from our landing," Deadeye confirmed, his rifle tracking the massive creature. "It survived the mezzanine collapse." The Hydra moved with predatory grace despite its bulk, its chitinous body scraping across crystal formations that grew around its feet. But it didn't attack. It simply watched, 3 heads weaving in a hypnotic pattern. "It's studying us," Wolf whispered. "Higher forms learn, adapt. It remembers our tactics from the first engagement." Steel assessed their tactical situation. They were in the mall's central atrium, partially collapsed mezzanine above them creating deadly angles. The Hydra had positioned itself between them and the exit route, the same service staircase they'd used during the landing. Behind the squad, more crystallized people stood like a forest of ruby statues. "Breach," Steel said. "You still have charges?" 4 det packs, 20 meters of cord, and 1 very bad idea," Breach replied, his good hand already moving to his vest. "You want me to bring down what's left of the mezzanine?" "Not yet. First we need to wound it, drive it into a kill zone." Steel turned to Deadeye. "Can you model a demolition pattern? Show us where to place charges for maximum effect." The sniper's enhanced vision swept the atrium, his combat computer processing structural weak points. "There." He pointed to 3 positions along the mezzanine's remaining supports. "Place charges there, there, and there. Timed detonation, 3-second intervals. The collapse will funnel toward the Hydra's current position." "Do it," Steel ordered. "Wolf, you stay with Stitch. Hammer, you're on protection duty. Deadeye, cover Breach while he sets charges. I'll keep the Hydra's attention." "Boss, that thing almost killed us last time," Hammer protested. "You can't face it alone." "I'm not facing it. I'm distracting it. Steele pulled a thermal flare from his vest, one of our last lures. Heat signature will draw at least one of those heads. While it's focused on me, Breach does his work. This is a terrible plan, Deadeye muttered, but he was already moving into position. Steele activated the flare and threw it toward the Hydra's left side. The device landed with a hiss, burning at 800 degrees Celsius, hot enough to register as a human thermal signature on basic sensors. The Hydra's compound-eyed head snapped toward the flare, mandibles working in what might have been confusion. Then it lunged, moving with shocking speed for something its size. "Now!" Steele shouted. Breach sprinted for the first support column, his wounded shoulder forgotten in the rush of combat adrenaline. His hands worked quickly, placing the det pack and setting the remote detonator. 10 seconds. He was already moving to the second position. The Hydra's center head struck at the flare, acid spraying in wide arcs. The chemical ate through crystal formations, dissolving them into steaming puddles. Behind one of the dissolving crystals, a man's scream cut through the air, the berserker transformation triggering as his prison shattered. "Contact rear," Hammer warned as the berserker charged. The big man met it with his sledgehammer, crushing its skull in one brutal swing. We got more waking up, the acids breaking the crystals. Steele saw it happening. The Hydra's attack was creating a cascade effect. Everywhere its acid touched crystal, people were breaking free and transforming into berserkers. 3, 5, 10 of them, all roaring with mindless rage. "Breach, how long?" Steele demanded, firing controlled bursts at the berserkers. Each round counted. 13 remaining. 11, 9. Last charge going in now. Breach planted the final det pack and activated his detonator. 30 seconds on my mark. The Hydra's eyeless head suddenly swiveled toward Breach. Its acoustic holes whistled, a sound that Steele felt in his bones, and the creature pivoted, all three heads now tracking the demolitions expert. "It knows," Wolf shouted. "It's learning. It understands what the charges mean." The Hydra charged, not at Steele, not at the flare, but directly at Breach. 8 meters of armored fury bearing down on one wounded soldier. "Breach, move!" Steele sprinted toward his teammate, but he was too far away, too slow. Then Deadeye's rifle barked 3 times in rapid succession. The shot struck the Hydra's center head, not the armored skull, but the exposed gills beneath its mandibles. Black ichor sprayed, and the creature's charge faltered as it roared in pain. "The gills," Deadeye called out. "That's the weak point. Under each head, there's soft tissue." Steele saw it now, the vulnerable spots where the Hydra's heads connected to its body. Places where armor gave way to necessity, where oxygen intake required exposure. He fired his remaining rounds into the left head's gill slits, saw them rupture, saw the creature's compound eyes dim with pain. 20 seconds. Breach was running now, sprinting away from the support columns toward relative safety. The Hydra thrashed in agony, its wounded heads striking blindly. One massive tail swipe caught a cluster of crystallized people, shattering them into fragments. More berserkers emerged, but now they were confused, attacking the Hydra, attacking each other, attacking anything that moved. "Boss, we need to move!" Hammer had Stitch's stretcher over his shoulder in a fireman's carry, Wolf stumbling behind him. "This whole area's about to come down." Steele checked his HUD. Hour 7:52. "Everyone, fall back to the service staircase. Breach, detonate on my mark." They ran through chaos, berserkers clawing at their armor, crystal formations shattering under the Hydra's death throes, the red fog thickening until visibility dropped to barely 10 meters. Steele's boots slipped on ichor and blood, his lungs burning with the effort of breathing through compromised filters. 10 meters to the stairs, Deadeye called out, his rifle now slung as he focused on running. Behind them, the Hydra's roar shook the building. Steele risked a glance back and saw all 3 heads rearing up, preparing for one final assault. "Now, Breach, blow it!" The demolitions expert triggered his detonator. The support columns exploded simultaneously, each charge perfectly placed. For one frozen moment, Steele saw the mezzanine floor hanging in space, defying gravity. Then physics took over. Tons of concrete and steel crashed down on the Hydra. The creature's roar cut off mid-cry as the building's entire second level pancaked on its position. Dust and debris billowed out in a massive cloud that turned the red fog gray. "Go, go!" Steele shoved his team through the service staircase door, felt the pressure wave hit his back like a physical blow. He tumbled through the doorway, and Hammer slammed it shut behind them. The world outside became muffled thunder. They collapsed against the stairwell walls, gasping for breath. Steele's HUD showed hour 7:58. 2 minutes. They'd completed the engagement in 2 minutes that felt like hours. "Sound off," Steele commanded between breaths. "Deadeye, green. Out of ammo, but green. Breach, greenish, shoulders screaming, but I can move. Hammer, green, still got Stitch. The big man checked the medic's vitals. Still unconscious, but breathing steady. Wolf here. I'm intact." The scientist's hands were shaking worse than ever, his hazmat suit torn in several places. That was close. Steele allowed himself a moment of relief. They'd survived. Against impossible odds, they'd survived. But as he checked his ammunition counter and saw nothing but zeros, he knew their luck was running thin. "Boss," Deadeye said quietly. "The Hydra. Did we kill it?" Through the sealed door, they heard something that made Steele's blood run cold. The sound of debris shifting, of something massive pushing its way through rubble. A roar that was weaker than before, damaged, but still very much alive. "No," Steele said grimly. "We bought time, nothing more. Now we move. We've got..." He checked his HUD, watched it flicker between hour 7:59 and hour 8:03. We've got about 16 hours of suppressor protection left. We need to reach the evac corridor before this place tears itself apart." Wolf had moved to Stitch's side, pulling out medical supplies with trembling hands. He tried to check the medic's bandages, fumbled with the trauma pack, nearly dropped an auto-injector. "Here, Doc," Hammer said, trying to be gentle. "Let me hold the stretcher steady while you work." Wolf nodded gratefully, but his hands shook so badly he could barely grip the supplies. He managed to get a scanner pressed against Stitch's neck, checking vitals, but when he tried to adjust an IV line, his finger slipped and the tube disconnected. "Damn it," Wolf muttered, trying to reconnect the line. "I can't. My hands won't." "Easy, Doc," Hammer said, his gruff voice surprisingly kind. "You're doing fine." "I'm not doing fine." Wolf's frustration boiled over. "I'm a virologist. I study cellular structures through microscopes. I don't do field medicine. Every time I try to help, I make things worse." "You kept him alive," Steele pointed out. "That's all we need." Wolf finally managed to reconnect the IV, but the whole process had taken 3 minutes that should have taken 30 seconds. Hammer caught Steele's eye and gave a slight headshake. Their medical situation was critical. "Doc," Hammer said with forced levity, trying to cut the tension, "you gonna patch us up or finish us off? Because right now, I'm not sure which way you're leaning." Despite everything, Wolf managed a weak laugh. "I'm trying for the first option, I promise." Steele checked his HUD one final time. Hour 8:02. The timer jumped. Hour 8:07. Time was breaking down around them, the psionic interference making reality itself unreliable. "We move in 2 minutes," Steele announced. "Use this time to reload, resupply, and get your head straight. Next stop is the surface route to the evac corridor. 15 kilometers through hell." "Just another day in cleanup," Deadeye muttered, checking his rifle even though he had no ammunition left. Through the sealed door, the Hydra's roar echoed again. Weaker, damaged, but hunting. And beneath it, Steele heard something else. The whisper of the red fog, the click of crawler claws on crystal, the distant thunder of the network waking up. The mall was alive with mutants, drawn by the noise of their battle. And somewhere out there, coordinating them all, was the vast intelligence that had once been Colonel Marcus Steele. Steele's HUD showed hour 8:09. 15 hours and 51 minutes of protection remained.
Thank you for listening. New chapters will be released daily on the channel.
This audio material was produced exclusively for the Section 56 channel. All rights reserved.